So what is myCADtools? Um, myCADtools is a gold partner product that offers 70 CAD and PDM utilities for SOLIDWORKS. All these tools have the same objectives, and mainly three. The first one is to adapt the CAD tool to your organization and your work methods. In this case, SOLIDWORKS. It's there to reduce the time lost to managing CAD data in favor of design and innovation, and also to enhance the basic CAD functionalities by considering your specific business requirements. One macro might not necessarily work for all businesses out there, seeing that multiple businesses have different requirements. And this is where myCADtools provides that leading edge where you can actually change it and adapt it according to your organization needs. Now, currently, myCADtools is available to customers for free who have active SOLIDWORKS subscription. After these 12 months, if you do want to keep on using it, you'll have to purchase a license. And depending on the discount that gets given to you, that'll obviously determine the price that you'll be able to get the license for every single year. In addition to this, you also have access to myCADtools training content. So whether it be on YouTube, we have YouTube playlists, which I'll give at the end of the session. We also have a dedicated myCADtools suite of training tools where you can access a PowerPoint with step-by-step instruction guides, which I'll also show near the end of the presentation. Now, myCADtools is a collection, as we saw before, of multiple apps that allow you to streamline your business processes. And these range all the way from tools that allow you to perform batch conversion of certain file types. There are tools that allow you to build essentially your own macro to set up certain actions based on conditions that are met with specific files, whether you'd want to run a certain action on a file that has a specific property value or a certain color, or even a certain amount of parts. As you can see, there are a lot of tools under the myCADtools suite listed here. And to simplify it, we'll just categorize them into 5 sections, namely manage projects, design, drawing, production, and use. So there are various tools depending on which section or which angle you want to come in when you are using SOLIDWORKS, if I could put it that way. Now, obviously, we won't be able to do all of them today. We'll have to spend at least a few days or maybe a whole day on doing that. So I'm just going to outline the most commonly used tools by our customers in this session. And then again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the questions or the comment section, and I'll address them near the end of the session. The first one that I'm going to look at is sheet metal manufacturing. Now, what this tool allows you to do is it allows you to open up essentially any part or assembly, whether they have, let's say, a mixture of sheet metal items and weldments items, or even one sheet metal item and the rest of them being, let's say, a dumb solid. This tool will extract those sheet metal items out of your assembly, and it'll convert that assembly's parts into drawings and export those drawings as a DXF with the flat pattern that you included. So let's see this thing in action. I'm going to open up my SOLIDWORKS, and here you'll see I have a support frame assembly. Now, before I continue, on the right, for those of you who don't know, this is called the SOLIDWORKS task pane. I'm going to access an app within the myCADtools suite called Local Help. Now, you'll notice that myCADtools is also a Windows-based app. So if you do have this installed, you can launch it from your Windows taskbar, and within the myCADtools app, we can see all those sections that we had before in the presentation. So from here, you can execute the app, access online help resources, or you can even reset the settings, if you will. I think this is just very important to point out before I do continue. In addition to that, you also have a myCADtools tab in your assembly, drawings, and parts environment. So you can even launch them from within SOLIDWORKS without having to go to various, let's say, various menus, as some of our customers always tell us. Why do I have to go there? Why can't everything just be in one interface? Well, here you go. You can just access it here. So under my local help, to make that even more easier, I don't want to use the tab. And sometimes all the options on this myCADtools tab isn't being used by my company. So to refine it even more, I'm going to use this local help button, and I'm going to use what's called the frequently used tools group that I've made. But I also want to add the sheet metal manufacturing tool. So to do that, I'm going to select this button, go to the group where I want to add it, add, and then I have a few selections here that I can make. In this case, I just want a button. So I'm going to select button, and I'm going to point this to the executable file on my Windows machine, so that when I click the button, it'll actually launch the app. So this opens up many, many possibilities. You'll notice on the right-hand side, not just with files, but you can also do SOLIDWORKS commands as well. So if you want your new document, your open document, SOLIDWORKS settings, properties, all the way to even your measure commands. If you want everything to be accessible in one menu, local help is the tool to use. So I'm going to go back to my file, and I'm going to add the sheet metal manufacturing tool. So I'm going to go to the installation directory, in this case, program files, open up myCADtools, search for sheet metal, and open up the executable. And so now when I choose button and click add and move it to the top to reorder it, I can now access the tool from there. So I'm going to launch the tool, which will open it up in a brand new window. All the tools in or of myCADtools have a similar looking user interface for the most part. We can add an active document or a document that isn't currently open to whatever tool you are using. In this case, I want to use this assembly and it's currently open. So I'm going to add the active document. After it's been added, you'll notice on the left-hand side of my tree, I have 5 items. However, the one item, if we just move this sideways, is not currently listed as a sheet metal item because it is a dumb solid. So you'll notice that it only listed 4 items here out of those 5. If you wanted to, you can even right-click on one of your columns, click Manage. You can actually add more properties here. So if you wanted to, let's say, add a property for your bounding box length, or as you can see there, I've already added material, or even your bounding box width, or the amount of cutouts that you have. All that is possible by just adding an additional column, just like you would in Excel. Under options, we have to now specify our export options for when we want this thing to be done or to be exported to DXF. So we are just going to use the standard default settings for our alignment of the model. However, under my geometry, I want to just export the outline of the flat patterns. I also want to show the sketches or the fold lines and also the bend notes. In addition to that, I want to save these DXF files under a subfolder called DXF in this assemblies folder. For the file name, I have the option of either using the name of the item of which I'm getting the flat pattern from, or I can actually add various components together to build a custom-made name. So you'll notice here, I actually have three different blocks, if you could call them that. The first one is the actual file name that I get from Windows, dash, and then the material of the item that I'm exporting. So if you also wanted to, just like building Legos, you click plus and you add them one at a time. So you can add the value of SOLIDWORKS properties here, the value of even a reference to documents. So that's a very good idea. Maybe if you have a drawing and you have a property that drawing's assembly is referencing, that must be imported into your drawing, whether it be the revision of the assembly itself, whether you do it in the drawing or not, you can then draw that into the DXF's file name. You can also do properties of weldments or sheet metal parts, specific weldment properties if you're into that, and various SOLIDWORKS values such as center of gravity values, document titles, mass, material, etc. Okay, so for now I'm going to leave this as is, and I also want myCADtools to generate a report for me afterwards to see if this was successful. Now if I go back to my file selection, I can also apply a quantity factor. So in this case, the customer requested that he wanted 3. So I'm going to leave it at 3 and click apply. SOLIDWORKS will now use those settings that I've selected in the background and will actually export this, as mentioned before, as a drawing, and will save that drawing as a DXF. So it's very important that if you do decide to use this tool, do not use a drawing template that has a title block on it. Otherwise, you'll see that in your DXF as well. I want to see the report. And then now if I drag it to the screen, I can now see that all 4 of them was a success. Let's see what they look like. So I'm going to head over to my location of the assembly under my DXF folder, and here you'll see all the DXFs. In this case, because Visiative is a French company with some French apps, the file that I'm using currently comes from the training set of files that you'll be using if you want to use a tool, which in this case is referencing English or French rather materials. So I'm just going to open up a few of them so you can have a look and see what they look like. And according to the settings that I've specified in the background, it should also list the properties of the sheet metal item underneath the flat pattern. As you can see there, there's the quantity, the thickness, material, and also the configuration. You can also deselect that if you want to. So when you do use these tools, it's obviously worthwhile to just take the time to go through each of these settings one at a time, and also to set them up so that you have a better long-term solution. And please note that when you do set up these settings, you can also save them, put them on the server, and all the users of your company can use the exact same settings. So it's pretty useful for you as an admin to be able to do that as well. And there you go. That is sheet metal manufacturing. Getting back to my slide. The next one that we'll look at now is the Mark Fold Lines tool. Now what this tool does is, again, we're looking at the sheet metal theme here. You just simply select the bend lines that you want to use for this tool in SOLIDWORKS. And what we'll do is we'll actually cut out the fold line profile on the edges of the bend lines, whether it be a triangle or a custom shape that you've made. So to showcase this, I'm going to open up this file and to include the profile cut on each of these bends. What some customers go and do is they flatten this first. And then after they flatten it, they actually go make a sketch, put the sketch on that bend line, and then perform a cut. However, with the theme of today's lesson, with these new super tools, you can be a lot more productive by just using this tool, which will add those cuts for you as a cut extrude feature. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to flatten it again. Under my local help, I'm going to access the Mark Fault Lines tool, and you'll notice it loads within SolidWorks. In this case, it can process it automatically for me. However, I only want these two bends listed here on the side. So I'm going to go to bend line selection, select these two bend lines, and my block template that I'm going to use, in this case, is just a triangle 1 millimeter. And here we have the option of adding two different types of collinear bend lines. In this case, I'm going to choose the latter one. And when I click confirm, it'll now go and generate the sketches, add the cuts, fold my part, and now it'll leave us with a marking fold lines cut extrude feature. When I unsuppress the flat pattern, it unsuppresses the flat or the cut that was suppressed earlier. So when I go normal to, we can now see the cuts that were added here. So if you want to, let's say, export this to DXF using your sheet metal manufacturing tool, you can also suppress these beforehand, seeing that it's a brand new feature, and then export it that way, just so you don't lose any information. Moving on to the next one. The next tool that I want to look at is the cutting optimization, one of my favorite tools. What this tool allows you to do, and this is especially for those users out there that work with structural members on a daily basis, whether you design or manufacture them, it's for both parties. This tool allows you to export a report of how a certain weldments item, whether it be one part or an entire assembly, must be manufactured, and also how much stock you have to order. So depending on your scrap that you specify and the amount of, let's say, your scrap that your machine generates when you want to start your manufacturing, it'll actually determine the amount of time that it will take to cut, the amount of scrap that will be produced as a result of using, let's say, 7 meters of beam or certain beam that you've ordered, and also what the price is if you've set that up before. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to open up an existing drawing of a stair frame that we've made before. You'll notice here the stair frame only uses two types of profiles: round tube 33.7 in diameter and round tube 21.3. So to generate this report, I'm going to access the cutting optimization tool. You'll notice it opens up a new window again, but I'm going to start a new project. Now, before I start, let me quickly just move it a little bit to the side. After I've started a new project, I have to insert the values that I want. So in this case, the project title, I'll just call this project AB-01. Our project number will be 01. This is being executed by myself, Brandon Dry. And in this case, my beam lengths that I want to order, obviously depending on what company you are with, is 6 meters. I want the treatment to be, say, paint. Then on the right, I've already gone ahead and I've determined this for the machine that my company is using, but we currently use a blade width of 5 millimeters and then initial waste of 100 from what we've determined. On the left-hand side, you can now import the list used for the report by opening up a part or by selecting a table that you've already made. In this case, the one that I have here. So I'm going to select this button. It'll minimize the menu. I'm going to select the table, and then by selecting that, it's smart enough to recognize the round tubes that I've specified. Now when I click OK, it recognizes that there are same length cuts detected. In this case, I am going to merge them. Now, before we continue, it's worth mentioning that the profiles that it recognized there comes from a library that I've set up before. Now, when you do launch myCADtools for the first time, if you open up the profiles database, it has hundreds of profiles listed already, but you can also import your profiles that you've made within SOLIDWORKS by pressing the Profiles SOLIDWORKS button. In this case, I only have two databases. I have a bar database and a tube database, which in this case houses the square tubes, round tubes, and the rectangular tubes. Now that I have this list, I want to add more properties to this before I generate the report. So I'm going to select these 6 items over here, and I want to assign a certain color to them to be used in the report. So I'm going to select them all, choose this color palette, and specify a color on each profile. So now you'll notice profile number 1 has this murky color, and profile number 2 has this reddish color. In addition to that, if you want to, you can also add more columns, just like we would with the sheet metal manufacturing tool. And then when you click plus, you can double click on this and add a new name. So this could be either the angle cuts, if you do it with bounding boxes, you can use those bounding box values, and so on and so forth. Currently, my units is set to millimeters, which is what I want. And now as the second to last step, I'm going to select all these profiles and specify the orientation that they must be placed at in the machine. Now you'll notice here on the right-hand side, I'm just going to select the specify the orientation button. And you have a set of tools here that allows you to rotate them to either direction or choose the type of profile that you're working with. In this case, we know that we are working with a round profile. So I'm going to select this option. And please note that the sketch and the preview you see here can also be customized for your needs as well. So you don't have to use these. And then for these last ones, I'm also going to specify the orientation at the exact same angle. And now for my last step, I'm going to go to my options. And under my options, I have to specify the locations of where I want these files to be saved. So you can store your projects folders, your report folder, settings, and even the location of your profiles database, which I would recommend to put on your server if you do work with quite a large team. Here we can also set our units or precision settings. Here's our report settings. In this case, we want a PDF to be generated. And the items that must be shown in this report includes a project summary, sheet cuts, list of bars that I need to order, and also the amount of time it'll take based on the times that I specified in my library earlier. Now I'm going to click report. And after a few seconds, as you can see as well, I did specify a quantity of 1. The customer only wanted 1. And here you can see the length that it recommends for every item under each respective category. And under my length cuttings list, I can see there's only 3 items or 3 beams, 31 more scrap, 228 of scrap for item number 2, and 4892 for item number 3, which adds a total of 5182 as scrap. And it's as simple as that. categorizes all of them for you. As you can see, there's my treatment or my paint there, and it uses this template that I specified before with the times there at the end as well, which in this case would amount to about 25 minutes, according to my settings. And that is cutting optimization. Okay, moving on to the next one. The next one that I want to have a look at is Smart Bomb, also one of my other favorite tools. What this tool allows you to do is it allows you to generate a bill of materials for your assembly. And within that bill of materials, it allows you to modify the cells as you would normally in SOLIDWORKS, but it also goes to those items that you are changing, and it actually changes the file properties on your behalf. So for example, if you have a description column on your BOM and you change the cell value of that description cell, it'll go to the item that it references and it will change it for you. But there are also other options that you have here, just like with your standard SOLIDWORKS capabilities. You can export your table with, let's say, an Excel thumbnail on the left of each, let's say, column, or sorry, row of the items, and much, much more filtering capability too. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to open up this table assembly, which currently has 158 components in total. And as I did before, I'm going to use local help and select Smart Bomb. In this case, I'm going to use the active assembly. So I'm going to select this active assembly button, enable my edit properties to be able to edit them afterwards. In this case, I want the shrink configuration, and then I want to click apply. And please note that the template that this is using can also be customized afterwards by yourself if you don't want to add your columns manually like we've been doing with all of these tools. Now you'll notice here that all these custom properties have been filled in. However, some of their treatments are missing. So if I go to this part here on the left, for example, let's say item SB chassis table, and I open it up. Or let's take this one here, for example, assemble table. And I go to its properties. You'll notice that all of them are there, again being French, but they don't have in this case, they have a French one, but in this case, I want to add my own treatment there. So some people would go ahead and open up every single part one at a time and change it, but in this case, that's not necessary at all with this tool. So I'm going to open it up, and again, just to confirm and verify if this is the correct assembly, I'm going to click open here, open with SOLIDWORKS. Just wait for it to open up. In this case, let me rather go to its folder, just see. Close it, try again. In this case, that is the top level assembly. It's quickly loading. Okay, I'm going to relaunch this tool. And let's try the third component again. Let's open it up. Please note that when you do use these tools, depending on the Windows update that you've applied or your computer performance, that'll obviously determine how fast your assembly loads at the end of the day. The next tool that I wanted to have a look at as well is the integration tool. Now, what this tool allows you to do as well is, as mentioned before, there is a tool that will allow you to essentially build your own macro for SOLIDWORKS. So depending on the complexity of the macro that you want to work with, that'll obviously determine how long it'll take to make the macro on myCADtools. So to look at this, I'm going to go back to my SOLIDWORKS session, and I'm going to open up the integration tool. So within this integration tool, I have to specify my set of criteria and the set of operations that I want to use. So in this case, I want to change an entire set of documents, mass units, the length units, the volume, the drafting standard that it's using, and even their preview settings. So on the right-hand side, when I set my conditions, I've gone ahead and I've opened up one that I've made before for my company. But under your conditions, you can set it up so that it must run this action if this property does not exist, or if a property has a certain value. If we go to the SOLIDWORKS one, for example, it must run it on, let's say, if you want to convert all SOLIDWORKS 2020 files to SOLIDWORKS 2023, you can set it up to run it only on files that are set to run in SOLIDWORKS 2020, and so on and so forth. So you have various configuration actions, conditions here as well, various document conditions, part, assembly, and drawing. Under your operation has the exact same sections. You can add today's date. You can maybe add a question property. Under your part, you can export it to a certain file type, change the color, change the material, or even update the cut list. So the possibilities here are nearly endless of what you can do. And this all depends on the standard that your company is working with. Now, in this case, I did say that I was going to change a few of these standards. So when I do open this up, and let's say I look at this gasket drawing, you'll notice firstly that the weight units says 0.02, because if I go to my document units, I can see that the mass is in pounds. Not only that, but if I go to my drafting standard, I can currently see that it's ISO. I want to change that. So I'm going to close this up. And with the collection of tools or conditions and operations that I've set up, I can click plus, and under my conditions, you'll notice here that the condition that I've set up is if the document is a part, or if the document is an assembly, they must go and perform the setting change and change the unit mass property to 3. Under my length, let's say, and look at my conditions again, if the document is a part or an assembly, it must change the setting, in this case, the units of mass to 0, and the units linear to 0 as well. So what this will do is it'll just change my unit standard. There's my volume in decimeters cubed, my drafting standard that I want to change. In this case, that document setting again. And you'll notice these values here on the side. For those of you who aren't aware, it depends on the SOLIDWORKS settings that you have in the background. So 1, for example, might be ISO, 2 might be ANSI, 3 might be another standard, and so on and so forth. Added even my previous settings. So now, before I go there, let's head down to my options. I just want to make sure that my report is going to be generated. There's a log file location there. And if needed, for now, I'll just keep it the same. We can also use a naming rule. So you can add certain characters at the start or at the end of your file, replace, let's say, a part of a file name, or completely replace the name with something else that you've selected. And in this case, I'm going to keep it in the same directory as the original file. And so when I click apply to all, it'll run this set of actions that I've specified based on the conditions that I've made. We'll just give that a few seconds to run. In this case, I do want to see the report. And when I go to the warnings, I can see all of them was a success. And in this case, it just says failure because my real view was not enabled, which in this case won't affect it that much. And there you go. So let's quickly have a look. I'm going to go to that folder there, open it up in my Explorer. And then now if I go to custom, in this case, mine was set to pounds before, but in this case, it's now my dual dimension length, in this case, is millimeters. Quickly close that up. Just quickly look at my drawings here under my idler arm. In this case, you'll see it went and adjusted the mass. In this case, I did say that it must be a part in assembly, so that's why I didn't change the drawing. But you'll notice that the dual dimension length is still millimeters, but the mass is now kilograms. If I open up another part here, say hanger 2, and open up its document properties, you'll now notice this one is also in kgs. And the dual dimension decimal set to none, with the length that we said before must have a decimal value of at least 3 units. And now it's 1, 2, 3. And so, as I mentioned before, there's a lot that you can do with this tool. And when you do run myCADtools for the first time, you can access all of these if you want to open up, let's say, a sample where myCADtools can insert a BOM for you, change the mass to kg, as you saw now, update cut list automatically, even perform a certain zoom orientation on the parts before it's saved and closed, and so on and so forth. And that is that tool. The next one that I want to have a look at is smart drawings. Now, what smart drawings allows you to do is it allows you to generate a drawing of a part automatically based on the templates that you've specified for your weldments and your sheet metal items. Not only that, but it also has the capability of inserting dimensions for you and tables as well. So I'm going to go back to my SOLIDWORKS and I'm going to open up this weldment part. I want to make a drawing with a sheet for every single item listed in SOLIDWORKS. Now, obviously, doing that manually would take forever to do. So I'm going to click on, well, I'm going to first launch my local help app again, and then select Smart Drawings. Once Smart Drawings is open, I have to tell SOLIDWORKS what template I must use for sheet metal and weldments items, which in this case I am happy with. And also under my generated drawings on the bottom left, as we saw with the sheet metal manufacturing, I'm going to use the file name and then a dash and then the name of the configuration of that part. Location, I want to keep it in the same folder as the 3D files. And then if I click here on the dimension options, I can ask SOLIDWORKS to do the dimensioning for me automatically, or to just use the dimension that I used in my part that I marked to be imported into my drawing, and to remove duplicates. In this case, I'm going to use the automatic dimensioning. You'll notice there's also assembly objects and drawing objects here as well. In this case, there is no assembly. And then under the drawing of part, I want to include the weldment cutlass table as well. So I'm going to select this option, go to the set of training files that are given to you when you start using myCADtools. In this case, a cutlass template. And I want it to be placed with balloons as well. And the anchor point of bottom or top right. So before I click OK, as we saw with all of these tools, I have to specify the document that I want to use. In this case, it is active in SOLIDWORKS. And then the last step, under my options, I have to specify it must scale the view for me automatically. Sheet metal, it should just use the part model itself. And in this case, we also have the option of creating a new view for each developed part in the center of the sheet. So this can also build on top of the functionality that you have with your sheet metal manufacturing tool, where you could use that one to generate the DXFs, and you can use this one to add those flat patterns for you, but to generate a SOLIDWORKS drawing for you as well. And so now when I minimize this and I click apply, it'll now run the command. As you can see, it's quite busy in the background. And obviously, depending on the settings that you use and the amount of items you have, that'll determine how, if I could call it messy, your drawing gets. So if the drawing does get quite cluttered with information, please be aware that it depends on your setup that you've had before. So if you use your predefined view in your drawing template and you specified or you put it at the incorrect spot, obviously your views might even go beyond the border. And also if your part has a lot of dimensions, you might want to delete a lot of them. As you'll see by looking at a simple part like that, it might just add too many dimensions for you if you use the automatic dimensioning method. So you can see this tool as a tool that helps you out a lot by generating these items for you. And then you just have to clean it up afterwards and refine it even more. And as you can see, I don't even want to imagine how long this would have taken me if I had to do this all from scratch. And currently it's at, wow, that's, I think, drawing sheet number 16. So that is it's actually 18. Yeah, so that's a lot of sheets within a few seconds. As you can see, there's one there that might have, let's say, too many dimensions, but you can clean it up afterwards as well. Or you can just use the default setting that uses your dimensions. And in this case, if I open up that enormous drawing, you'll notice here that, okay, we'll have to do some cleanup on this one. Wait for this one to load. However, with the other tools, I'll just launch that again. You might just have to use them again. Okay, moving on to the next one. The next one that I quickly want to have a look at with the last bit of time that we have is the assembly board. And then after that, we'll quickly do the batch converter. And I'll show you the results of the smart bomb. With the assembly board, you can generate a drawing as well of an assembly that you are using, but it can all be referenced by the bomb. So on one sheet, you could add, let's say, an isometric view of every single item listed on your bomb. And underneath each view, you can list the properties listed in the bomb as well, and it will automatically sort them out for you. So to showcase that, I'm going to open up this gearbox drawing. And we'll wait a few seconds for it to open up. And in this case, I'm going to go to my local help and select assembly board. Opens up in my property manager. All I do is I just select the BOM that I want to work with. In this case, I'm not going to include any properties. That depends on your company standard. But here you'll see I can include the scale that I want of the text underneath each view, the drawing template that I want to use when I do generate this drawing, and also the view setup of my sheet. So here you'll see the main view, which is the top level isometric view, will be at the top. And then here, item number 2's view or row number 2 of my BOM will be listed on the bottom left-hand side of item number 1. And so when I go to, let's say, item number 1, I can list this one as an isometric view, and item number 3 could be, let's say, a front view, perhaps. So this builds on top of smart drawings as well. In this case, as I said, I'm going to keep the properties blank for now. But when I do click confirm, within a few seconds, it'll generate a brand new drawing with the template that I specified before. And if you have selected any properties, it'll list them at the bottom of every single view. How quick was that? I think it was like 6 or 7 seconds. So this is a very handy tool for you to use. And last but not least, next one, which is the batch converter. So for those of you who have PDM, this is very similar to what PDM can do. We can batch export certain drawings to PDF if you have it set up in your workflow. However, this batch converter can do any file type that you want. It can add a thumbnail or let's say a watermark on drawings on your behalf. It can even you can change the export settings beforehand, but there are certain export settings in this tool that you would not necessarily find in your SOLIDWORKS task scheduler app, for example, for those users out there who use it. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you a few of the drawings that I'm going to be exporting to PDF. So you'll notice here, if I open up this shifter fork, we want this one to be exported to PDF with a watermark placed on it. So I'm going to go to my local help, select batch converter, and then once it opens up, I'm going to select the entire folder where this drawing is to export the entire folder as PDF. So I'm going to select add folder, go to the tool that I am working with. In this case is the batch converter. I want to include all dependencies or all items that are referenced to it. It is a SOLIDWORKS file, and I want to convert it to PDF. In this case, I'll keep the naming convention the same that I've used for all of the tools. Under my options, I can now also change the zoom settings. So for those of you who get very annoyed in the drafting office when someone saves a drawing and it's zoomed in too far or too far in or too far out, this tool is there for you guys as well. So it'll fix that issue for you. You can change document colors. You can save active documents before processing if they haven't been saved before. And then just in case your SOLIDWORKS does get slow, you can even restart it after an X amount of conversions have been performed. I'm working with PDF in this case. So I just want to export the active sheet of each drawing. I don't want to merge all of them into one file. And then lastly, for my image, I want to insert a picture on the drawing to signify my watermark on all sheets. And the size, in this case, I'll just use my default settings. So now when I go export options or export processing, I'm going to click apply, which will now use those same settings that I had before. And then after a few seconds, it should be done. Now, please be aware as this tool is running, every file that I'm using currently is part of the training set of files. So everything that I'm doing right now, you can do by yourself as well, step by step with a provided tutorial in PowerPoint. Once you have access to myCADtools for free, or if you've purchased it, you have it with both ways. Now, when I look at the report, I can see that it was a success. Now let's look at the completed one. So here we can see if we open up all of them, or in this case, I'm just going to open up a few of them. So maybe just do 2. We'll now see it looks like this. So this is very standard to your normal tools, but as mentioned before, you have all of these file types that you can use. We can also include their dependencies as well. You have customized import processing tools as well if you want to import DXF files and convert them to SOLIDWORKS drawings. So it can be done vice versa as well. And that was the last tool. So just to get back to that assembly that we had before, in this case, I was experiencing a few technical difficulties with the changes that I made on my side. However, please note that when you do launch the Smart Bomb tool, unfortunately, I wasn't able to showcase it now with the Windows updates that I've had. However, once you have generated it, you can export your bomb as it's an Excel table. Save your bomb templates so you can reuse them, especially after you've added your own columns. And then lastly, if you go to your settings, you can also generate PDF reports, text reports, or even drawing reports and add them as a table anchor as well. And that concludes my session. So just to recap on some of the things that we mentioned, these set of tools allow you to save time and gain reliability. They increase your productivity and boost your innovation. And they also add value to your business functions. As you saw, you can change and adapt these tools according to your business standards. Whether you use one tool or more than 40 of them, it's up to you. For additional information, feel free to visit our myCAD systems, myCADtools website after the session. And also, if you want more videos to watch, you can also access the myCAD systems YouTube channel, a myCADtools playlist, which shows in about 2 to 4 minutes on average videos on how to use each tool, including the ones that we saw today. For more info, you can also contact, if you're an existing myCADtools customer and you want more information, you can contact support@mycad.co.za, or you can contact marketing@mycad.co.za, and they'll get someone to be in contact with you if you're a customer. Thank you all for having attended this webinar. May you have a lacquer week, and we'll see you in the next one.